Hello, this is me, Mr. Puhl, your instructor. In this couple of videos, I'm going to talk about my accident and OSHA experience. Most of them involved OSHA, some of them didn't. And let's just partake some of my uh, experiences with you, okay? First time I ever even heard about OSHA was at about 1973. I was running in New Martinsville, West Virginia. I was running a little small drapery plant. And this guy shows up and, you know, he says he's from the government is here to help us. Well, back in that 73, that wasn't, the government doesn't seem to be so bad. So, I let him in and he's on in, have a cup of coffee. And we have a cup of coffee. And he said, I shouldn't even take the cup of coffee, but he did. And he walked around, found some things. And he was really struggling to find things. I think he did find some few things. Well, one thing he found was an iron. Okay, it was a drapery plant. So we had to iron something. So we had an iron. And he took a picture of it. He took a picture of the plug. He says, it doesn't have a ground pin. And I looked, I says, that's the way it came. I says, we just bought this up at Kmart. Anybody can go in this Kmart and buy this iron. You mean it's hazardous? And he said, oh, it must be double insulated. So he didn't take a picture of it. So sometimes if you challenge these people, you'll win. It's not always, but sometimes you will. And so anyhow, do you know how I'll tell if a tool is double insulated? Well, I'm going to tell you, it's in my class, several classes. On the nameplate of the tool, there'll be a square within a square, and that tells you it's double insulated. You go to Home Depot or something and look at their tools, their power tools, and you'll see some of them don't have three pin plugs on them, don't have a ground pin, and look on a nameplate, and it'll have a square within a square, and that tells you it's double insulated. So anyhow, we got a fine about it, and the mechanic, we didn't have internet or nothing like that, so I just typed my answer up and I contested it as best as I could and got the fine delivered in about half, um, so everything was hunky dory. And I went back a couple of years later when one of our lawyer was down there and he's looking around and told him about it, and he says, "Who wrote this up?" I said, "I did." "Oh, it was pretty good," he said. Okay. Anyhow, and then made my way out to California, and the first place I worked at was a mattress pad manufacturing company, and it was again we didn't really know what OSHA was, but when I got there, I wanted to get some data, so I had a scrounge around because they weren't doing accident reports on OSHA forms or anything like that, doing OSHA logs or anything. So I scrounged them up what I could find, and I found out the year before I got there they had 28 accidents. All right. Then the first year they had 12, and it was down to 8. And I still thought that was too much. And we didn't have a program. The company didn't say have anything about safety. It wasn't that big a deal back then. But I just didn't want my people getting hurt. That's all. So, but we had one really bad accident, and it was the material for the mattress pads were sonically quilted. So they passed over this pinroll and three layers of it, and they got quilted together by these sonic horns. They vibrated at a very high rate, and they to keep there was a bar there where the roller passed, like the bar had the roller was here to keep the material against it and put pressure on it. And there was about this much room, a couple inches of room between the bar and the pinrolls. No big deal. People they stuck their hands out there all the time to feed it in. Well, we got a pinroll in that was a couple just in diameter bigger than the other ones, and nobody noticed it. I didn't, nobody else. So the first time they tried to use it, the guy tried to feed the fabric under it, and it was only about this much room in there now, and he got his hand caught in there, and it degloved the back of his hand. It was a bloody mess, and it was painful as heck, and but he recovered, of course, and well, there's no OSHA because we didn't even know about OSHA, to be honest with you. So. But anyhow, this happened because we had a change in our equipment. Something new came in and changed, and nobody, including me, noticed it. And so when something happens that's changed, that's when you really have to take a look at it. So then I ended up that was in California, and I went to a company called Bonded Fiber Products. And and it was once part of Wellman Inc., which was a big company, and I was the safety coordinator for the facility at Bonded Fiber Products before it was bought out by the vice president of the company, which kind of was like the same job, different company. And so one day we get a knock on the door, and it's an OSHA inspector, and my boss said, "Should we let her in? I mean, should we make her get a warrant or something?" I says, "Yeah, I think it'll be okay. Just let her in." So her name was M.A. Kennedy. So, we What happened was a temp employee was walking through the plant and the mechanics were putting together a piece of equipment. It wasn't in production yet. It was just being built. And so it didn't have guards and stuff on it. Well, he reached in there to try to move some fiber out of a pulley and he cut the tip of his finger off. So since he was a temp employee, it didn't go on our OSHA logs, but they reported as an amputation to OSHA, which you had to do back then, even in California, which was fine. They did what they had to do. And this person showed up about it because of this amputation. So, okay. So the first thing she asked, oddly enough, was, "I want to see the minutes of your next safety meeting." Well, we did regular safety meetings, and I got them and showed it to her, and it was in there. And I think that that really was an important step because she was seeing if we just would, because it was a temp employee particularly, we just, brushed this under the rug. But we didn't. We talked about it. Then she wanted to see our IIPP, which is Injury and Illness Prevention Plan or program, and which California had, and they're trying to get it to be universal, but it's a joke. I'll tell you what it is. When you get an inspection for an IIPP, and I had one, so when she asked for it, I had it. But the inspector will look at it, flip through it, and throw it, set it aside, and you're done. If you say you don't have one, you're going to get written up for it. So it's just a moneymaker for OSHA. That's all that is. Um, so anyhow, this inspector wanted to go back and see where this happened. Now, by this time, this piece of equipment was in production and guard and everything else. Now, here's a good bit of advice. Never lie to OSHA or any government facility, well, or anybody, but particularly OSHA or any government facility. Because, if you're ever a witness and your lawyer will tell you when you get on the witness stand, don't lie. Whatever you say, I can handle it. But if you lie and you get caught in it, we're done. So anyhow, don't lie. So she go back and look at it, and she didn't ask many questions or anything about it. And of course, it wasn't in the same configuration it was when he got hurt, but she didn't say anything about it. She said, "That looks pretty good to me." So we're walking back to the office, and she pulls a plug out of on a column and didn't have a round pin on it. And she says, and I looked at her, "Oh, well, and she looked at it and she said, fix it and stuck it back in." And I didn't hear from her for about 6 months. I called her, says, "What's going on?" She says, "Oh, it was deemed an independent employee act, so there's no action on OSHA's part." So that was pretty good. And it was pretty good for me because my boss didn't know I had all this stuff, and I wasn't doing such a good job in the safety thing. And so then we got bought out by Western Nonwovens, which was a similar industry, and then you'll see if you look in my introduction, it shows you how I got to be the charge of the director of safety and environmental compliance for them. So anyhow, um, at Western, one of the brand, the main office, Western Synthetic, uh, somebody called in to say we have a machine guard. Well, I sent pictures of machine guarding of this, and they showed up anyhow. But this dude comes in and he worked in the aerospace industry. He was laid off in the aerospace industry. Aerospace industry plants are immaculate. I mean, beyond clean. And this is a fiber processing plant. It's not immaculate. So I think that was he was out to get us. He was kind of a jerk too. And so, I mean, he took a picture of at the end of a line of fiber processing. This particular type of fiber processing, they get rolled up. They're a big roll, and it's not real fast. And if it was, it would. It's all a homemade wooden belt and stuff. And so he took a picture of it, and in the meeting we had with him, he says, "Oh, it was so running so fast it was blurred in the picture." Well, his whole picture was blurred. Well, I took a picture of it with a tack on it, and it was 20 feet a minute. Okay, and, 20 feet in a minute. That's pretty slow. So was it a violation technically because it had a keyway in it? Yes, it was. Was it a hazard? No, not at all. So anyhow, they got to find about it in half, and because he was really a jerk. So. Now, over at the plant, Bonded Fiber Products, where my office was at one time, I had worked over there for many years before I moved to the home office when I became director of safety and environmental. Um, I happened to be over there that day. The plant manager was on jury duty, and I heard all this commotion went out. Well, this employee had opened up a door, an access door that should have been locked. There was a lock on it, and a lock was laying on the floor, and he knew this. and he reached in to clean something out of this picker. And this picker is a device that takes scrap and tears it back apart to feed it back in. This is fiber, so you try to get it back to the fiber stage and throw it back in. It had big teeth on it like this, and just to tear it apart. Well, it ripped his hand right off. I mean, just tore it off. And there was a bloody mess, and we called an ambulance, and they come and got him and took him away. And so I called OSHA and reported it because it was an amputation. And um, so after, and I hope you never have to call these people. There's an outfit called Crime Scene Santa Clean. And I've had to call them twice. And you don't ever want to have to call these people because when this happened, like I said, it was a mess. And and people didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I had this happen before. So I said to somebody, give me a bucket and some bleach and some gloves, and I'll start cleaning this mess up because I wouldn't ask anybody. I made something do that I wouldn't do. And so I got down on my hands and knees and bleach and buckets and trying to go wipe up the blood and everything. And one of the guys in shipping said, he got down and helped me too. And I got this guy a $500 bonus for doing that. He didn't have to do it. So we cleaned up the best we could. But I thought, you know what? I'm not going in that picker looking for his hand. I'm just not doing that. Took the picker out of service. And I called this place called Crime Scene Santa Clean. And they come in, and most of the time what they do, what they clean up after, sad to say, is suicides. Guy blows his brains all over the living room. That's sad, but that's what happens. But anyhow, he cleaned it up, and he got the stuff that glows on the blood, and cleaned all that up. Did a real good job. And so we got that all cleaned up. So anyhow, OSHA pops in a couple of weeks later because of this. It's okay, and he's looking at stuff. So and he said, I want to see the safety training on this guy or something like that. And I said, okay, I'll get it. So I go to my office and get a safety training file. Now, generally speaking, the company has three files on person. They have a personnel file, your weight, your what you make and all hand jobs, stuff. And that's obviously confidential. You have a medical file, that's very confidential. But then you have a safety training file, which is semi-confidential. The people haven't need to know, their supervisors and the people in the plant need to know it. It's just what they've been trained in for safety. So it's not real confidential. So anyhow, we had one of those for every employee and throughout all the 11 factories that I was in charge of. And so I go in and get it, and I brought it in there, and it was about 3/4 and a half inches thick. And I says, here's your safety training file. Did you ever see one like this before? He says, oh, I've seen personnel files that thick. I says, no, 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 no. This is not his personnel file. This is his safety training file. So he looked in it. The guy had been there for 15 years, and 15 times he was trained in lockout tagout. And and I had the machinery wasn't that sophisticated, so I had a picture on every panel, electrical panel of the for that machine of where to lock it out, and he knew, and so the guy goes away and he comes back a couple of weeks later for closing conference, and we got five other than serious violations. And that was a big win for us. You get somebody's hand cut off, you think you're going to get a serious violation there, other than serious. So it was just a slap on the wrist. So that worked out pretty good. And then this had nothing to do with OSHA. But one time I was in LAX flying out, and I flew out LAX a lot. And it's crowded, as like LAX usually is. And these guys, I see them coming down this big hallway with high ceilings, this huge hallway in an airport. And he's got like a 20-foot ladder. And he's getting up the very top step of this thing, the very, very top cap, and looking around up in the suspended ceiling. I don't know what he's looking for or what he's doing. So they come down at me. I saw him, and I went, and he's getting up this ladder, and this guy walks up with a clipboard. I kind of figured this was this guy's supervisor. And I said to him, I says, pardon me, maybe this is none of my business, but this gentleman obviously hasn't been trained in the proper use of a step ladder. And he looked at me and said, are you with OSHA? Well, I had an OSHA 30-hour card, and I could have whipped that, but I didn't want to do that. So I says, no, but I've been trained in it. And I says, he shouldn't be using this top steps. He says, oh, okay. So I went and got a cup of coffee. And remember, this is a crowded place. There's women and children, men all around, and he could fall and hurt somebody, hurt himself, or certainly would hurt himself. And so when I got a cup of coffee and I came back, they were gone, but the ladder was up against the wall. So I don't know what they did, but they stopped doing that. So that we had a plant in Sauget, Illinois, just outside of St. Louis, and across the border from St. Louis. And again, another temp agency employee. The line went down, and when the line went down, they didn't have anything for the temps to do sometimes. So he got kind of hidden in this access area that there was probably should have been a lot, but it shouldn't. And he got caught in a slow moving belt that's on the floor. And I don't know how he did. We'll never know how he did it. But he got caught in there and he got his head caught in it and it killed him. And they find a lit cigarette, a partial can of Coke, and a cell phone were found nearby. And I called into OSHA and I had to call crime scene Santa Clean again to come out and clean that up too. And it was a big mess. And I don't know what happened because it was still under litigation when I left the company. So in 2006, at one of the companies, Paltex, small in Southern California, an employee crawled on a floor under a belt and reached inside an opening, which wasn't really visible to remove some fiber. Now, why in a processing company, there's fiber all over the place, and why he did that, I'll never know. But he cut off the fingertip, and so I called it into OSHA. We had two general and two serious violations, a $15,000 fine. We paid about $5,000. And this is the one I went back to California to resolve because the as a consultant because the guy that replaced me at not OK Foods at Western Non-Wovens wasn't with it and wasn't competent. So that's my OSHA things up to the time I came here to uh what's this place I'm in? Oh yeah, Oklahoma. So that'll be it for now.